Thanks for joining me today, Tsahi. Let's talk about network APIs and WebRTC. What's your take? Is it hype or valuable?
Valuable, maybe, but not for us.
Okay. All right. Expand on that. I'm curious.
I think before we start, we need to define what network APIs are.
Okay.
And the way they got rebranded in a way, because when I grew up, like 20, 30 years ago, and we started talking about these things, were called telco APIs.
Okay.
It was a notion that carriers can have their own APIs, and they can sell and license these APIs to developers that would build whatever developers know to build. Mm-hmm. So the notion was, well, you could come to us and use SMS and voice calling, and that's going to be great.
Right.
And if you go and look at AT&T or Deutsche Telekom, they actually have these kinds of APIs today for many years now. Mm-hmm. Now, I dare you to find a developer that uses these APIs directly.
Right.
Okay. And I think that's where the problem lies. At the end of the day, when you want to do SMS or voice or verification APIs for mobile devices, you're going to do it through Twilio, Vonage, Infobip, or a slew of other CPaaS platforms. You're unlikely to go directly to the carriers. Mm-hmm. You might go directly to the carriers if you want to be very local in your offering. Mm-hmm. For example, if what you want to do is send SMS messages as a healthcare organization in Israel to your patients in Hebrew to an Israeli number, you're going to do it directly through Bezeq, which is the local CSP. That's like the AT&T of Israel. Right. You're not going to do it through Twilio, not because Twilio isn't good, but because Twilio is going to be very expensive compared to doing it through Bezeq. Mm-hmm. Okay? But if I'm a global player, I'm not going to go and talk to Bezeq because they're not going to allow me and enable me to do calls in the US. And if I'm a global player, I might not go to AT&T because they're not going to allow me to use numbers in Israel. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the main problem of telcos is going to be, or carriers or network APIs, it's going to be, well, is that going to be global for me? Where can I use it?
Right.
Okay, so let's say you're in the US. Are you going to use the AT&T APIs, the Verizon APIs, the T-Mobile APIs, or Compact APIs? Which one?
Right. Yeah. It depends on exactly where you are, right? I have best coverage with Verizon in my neighborhood. One town over, it's going to be AT&T, right?
But that's you as the user, not you as the developer or the business.
Sure.
So which one do I use?
Yeah.
What's best for me? I don't know.
Well, and as developers, we definitely don't want to have to navigate those APIs across different carriers or deal with any of that.
Let's say that we want to. You know what we really don't want to do? We don't want to navigate the contractual agreements that we need to go and sign with each and every one of them separately to do that.
Worse than the coding APIs.
Yes, they're going to kill you by all of these rules and licensing before you even get to doing an API call of something.
Yeah. Now, at least from the API perspective, there's desire to see this become more standardized across carriers and to work more seamlessly, right? Which is where the Camera project comes in. I don't know how that works on the licensing, the business side of what you're describing, if it will help there as well. But at least in theory, when you look at the Camera project website, right, they talk about seamless access across the network capabilities through APIs. And, we see that they've got a lot of big carriers backing this, right? So there's certainly a lot of the right names we'd want to see in here.
Yep. But, well, you know what AT&T is missing here?
Mm-hmm.
So where does that leave you in the US, for example?
Right.
And that's like, oh, it's here. Okay. So I guess the question then becomes slightly different. It's like, they're all in here. That's fine. Mm-hmm. Are they actually going to deploy that? And when? Are you going to see that in the next 2 or 3 years? And how?
Yeah.
And then let's go to the money time. What am I going to get for that?
Right.
What is in these APIs? And I would go to your blog post and to the examples that you've seen in the event that you've been in 2 weeks ago, something like that.
Yeah.
CASA
Yeah.
24.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's start monitoring network quality. Okay. WebRTC, which is where we live, or voice over IP, already monitors that. And it does that quite well. What would that enable me to do that I can't do today? And remember that I need to pay for that privilege.
Right.
So what does it give me more than I have today for something that is considered a free service? Video calling. What do I gain? Nothing.
Right.
Or very little. So then you go to the next one. Or, I can do network monitoring quality and go to 2, 3 different carriers and then decide which one to use. Great. How many use cases do you have like that? Network slicing for performance. With the example of drones. Okay, I'd say also self-driving cars or whatever that needs, reliable network, rockets flying. It's like very common here in Israel. And then the question is this: how many of these use cases really need that?
Right.
Would you be using network slicing to do your next video call or your next session with me next month?
No, probably not.
Nope. Why? Because I don't need it.
Right.
We've used networks before. We've learned that they are not reliable, and we work around that fact. So making them more reliable by paying for network slicing is nice.
Yeah.
But it's useless for many of the use cases. In many cases here today, what I do is WhatsApp calls in my house because guess what? The reception is better. On the 16th floor, it's better to use WhatsApp versus a cellular network because WhatsApp would go through Wi-Fi that is connected to fiber in the home. And it's global. All the numbers are reachable and it's free.
Yeah.
So it's like, what would I use? The third one that you've given, which is also the fourth, identity verification and know your customer, which means I want to know that this phone is yours, or the number that you've given me is associated with this phone and associated with you.
Right.
Great. What does that have to do with WebRTC or voice over IP? Nothing. And it's highly useful, by the way. And it is used today. If you go and use Twilio Verify or Vonage Verify or whatever they call it, or Infobip, same service, or Telnix, the same service, or 10 other companies that offer you the same thing through a CPaaS vendor that would aggregate that across carriers to give you that experience. So why do I, as a developer, need Camara? Probably not. Twilio or Infobip might need that. It might end up lowering their cost of operating the service.
Right.
But I don't see this as a standalone thing that is highly useful for all the developers out there. And there's the catch.
Yeah.
I don't think that carriers know how to interact and work with developers or how to interact with small businesses. They know how to work with large numbers. But if I'm a small startup and I need access to KYC, why would Verizon or AT&T care about me in any conceivable way?
Right.
With, support, useful billing, providing me access to, I don't know, consultancy, whatever. Nothing, not going to happen.
Yeah.
But then I would go to a CPaaS vendor and they would be there for me because that's what they do for a living. So you end up with carriers that would either work with large businesses, really large businesses, governments, I know, education system, things like that.
Right.
Or with CPaaS vendors. They would take these APIs and then abstract them out to use their own.
Yeah.
Hence, again, nice try or a very good initiative. It's not going to make money for the carriers, not the amount of money that they're likely thinking that they're going to get out of it. It's going to be highly useful in order to make this abstraction layer by the CPaaS of the world to get it to developers, but it's probably not going to be directly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you've made a lot of interesting points there. And I think that it matches, I think, some of the both interest and skepticism that I've heard from others in the WebRTC development community too, that yes, there's opportunities here, I think, but they can also be achieved in other ways. So it's a little bit of people kind of reselling other services in ways, or opening up other sort of sales channels for themselves as a company.
Yep.
I think in some niche use cases, like, network slicing for drones and stuff like that, there are things that, don't exist so much now that are new opportunities, but they're small niches, right? And so they're not going to be the vast majority of, the applications that we're dealing with, right? But there's, some interesting opportunities there, but definitely challenges too. With there is a bit of a gap that between kind of the background and experience of people in the telcos versus kind of the web development community. And in WebRTC, we've always kind of sat a little bit as a bridge between those communities, I would say. But this sort of highlights some of those differences, I think, too. And so I think that's how do they convince developers to use this, I think, is certainly an interesting challenge for it going forward.
And again, there's a second part. A carrier doesn't have an incentive to do that because there is not enough money in it for him. If at the end of the day, what we say is, well, there are a few niches that might need that. Okay. I worked at Amdocs like 15 years ago. I remember coming with the idea of let's do something around CPaaS and APIs because it's important, and there's Twilio and Tropo at the time. Tropo, we don't even remember it today as a company. They were the same size. Tropo took the route of working with carriers more than developers, and see where they are today. And I remember the GM of our business unit, he was my manager's manager in a meeting. He was in charge of 5,000 employees. He's sitting there looking at all that and saying, well, if this market is going to be $400 million in 5 years, that was years ago, it's not interesting enough for us, for a company like ours.
Right.
So, and this is going to be the mindset of carriers, because Amdocs was a company and is a company that sells to carriers. It's their market, and this is the mindset. So if your mindset is like, $100 million is not enough, well, there's no point in doing that. That's my view.
Well, just to state it for the record, if there's someone watching this who has $100 million market that they do need a niche network API developer for, give us a call, give Tsahi a call. We'll all be happy to work on it of that size of market for us. But yeah, there's definitely a different mindset. And so, yeah, I think this is an interesting space to watch. I'm starting to learn more about it myself. And I think we'll leave it there. Let's see where this goes. I think it will be interesting to see. So we'll continue to watch this ourselves. And I'm sure you'll talk about it at times too. For those of you interested in learning more about Tsahi's work and seeing his updates on this, check him out at bloggeek.me. And to learn more about future episodes of WebRTC Live and our work and our take on these sorts of things, check us out at webrtc.ventures. Tsahi, thanks again for joining me today for this industry insight and all of the insights you always share with us.
Thanks, Arin.
All right. Let's make it live.